Hello everybody! Happy Wednesday, happy scoping out. I'm so glad that you're here, my lovelies, because last week I talked about how to get back into the groove of things after a long break, and I talked about really tuning in and getting in touch with what you deeply want, what you yearn for, right? As opposed to those surface ego ones of whatever's going to be fastest, quickest, most comfortable, easiest answer, most convenient, whatever those things are, right? Well, I got some questions that says, well, how do you know the difference? And I touched on it, but when I reviewed last week, it was in a very cursory way because these are only supposed to be a few minutes long, so they're digestible. And I'm really glad that you follow up and you ask me because that helps me make sure I'm giving you what you come for. And what I was saying last week is that there's this tuning in process. It looks a little different for everyone, feels a little different for everyone, but it's really whatever method that takes for you to get in deeply. I'm going to go ahead and give you a method today, but first I want to talk about why this is important. We have the most developed part of our brain is right back here. It's the reptilian brain. It's responsible for self-preservation. So it's fight, flight. I add freeze because freeze is also a panic response where you just shut down, don't do anything. Ever had that happen? I've had that happen. Oh, I can't believe they said that. That's one of those situations where later you're like, oh, what I should have said was, oh, if I had been seen it coming, I would have done, this. So I add freeze to the list. The thing is, that is the most developed part of our brain. So that is the brain that is the sort of a first go-to in any situation, which is why when the thinking, creative, problem-solving part of the brain shuts down because of stress, because of fatigue, because of shock, whatever shuts down that major part of the brain, we're not inactive. We still have a part of the brain that is responsive, right? It'll get us out of trouble either by facing the fear, leaving the fear, or just deer in the headlights, hopefully it'll go away kind of fear, right? Response to fear. So because that is the most developed part of our brain, it is the same reason why when children go through significant brain weight changes in toddlerhood and again in adolescence, that the parts of the brain that can process emotions, thoughts, feelings, it is growing and sort of disassociated for a little while. So the default part of the brain comes to toddler tantrums, adolescent angst, right? So this is really, really common for us. What we fail to understand, though, when we're looking at this from a personal or a physical development standpoint, we go, okay, toddlerhood, adolescence, got it. But what is happening for us every single day is that we are more and more stressed every day, trying to solve more and more problems, trying to juggle more and more issues, trying to keep more balls in the air than we ever have before. And so rather than have that singular stress response to a specific issue, we're constantly playing stress in our head, right? I've told you some of my stories, even since the election, some of the things that plague my mind and plague my heart since the election, right? Like these are things that they're just blah, 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 blah in the background until they come in the foreground. And I should have said, and we come out in the foreground. We push it all back so we can get dinner done. We push it all back so we can have that heart to heart with our kids or whatever the thing is, right? We push it back, but it's still playing back there. And what happens is because that constant stress is going on, we become fearful in our response. So that ego response, or what I actually call the limited mind response, where the limited mind is the part of our mind that taps into the physical world, to the part of the world that needs addressing every single day, that we can touch, feel, understand, compare, contrast, those kinds of things. That limited mind is so responsive to that stress brain. It's constantly trying to fix and solve in the physical world what it believes you need, which is why fastest, easiest, best, convenient, those things become the thing, our go-to. Those things become the thing we think we want, right? They become limited mind wants or ego wants, physical, surface level desires. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in the context of what we were talking about last week, what ends up happening is if we're trying to get back into the groove, or we're trying to get ourselves into a new routine, even maybe a new health routine or something, we're trying to make some really good positive changes for us. If we go off of that consciousness that says, this is what I yearn for, this is a long-term goal, this is something that is steady as she goes, a little bit every day, that thing that we're trying to push ourselves into, to move ourselves forward evolutionarily, long game wise, right? That is so easily pushed aside for those limited mind wants. Again, those limited mind wants aren't bad, but they can become an obstacle to the deep yearnings, to the things that we really, really want. When we really want to live in accordance with our purpose, in accordance with our passion, in accordance with our highest good and our highest health. Right? We really genuinely want these fulfilling experiences in our lives. They take longer to get. They're harder to get. They take moving out of our box. They take getting uncomfortable. And because it takes that uncomfortableness to push us into that place, that limited mind want goes, you know what? No, just have the cupcake. You know what? No, just sleep in. You know what? Forget it. Take another day off. This stuff will wait. Right? So when I talk about tuning in, what I'm talking about is getting into that expansive mind, that deepest wisdom within ourselves that is not as much a pros and a cons list as it is a deep knowing. It's a connectivity to yes, from here to here, right? It's this connectivity that goes from head to heart. And then even bigger than that, it goes up. And it's expansive. And when you start learning about universal laws and quantum physics and the connectivity of people from consciousness to consciousness, how we're all one mind, you really begin to see that there is this vast network of wisdom. There's this vast network of ongoing and ever-propelling, ever-growing love that we can tap into, that we are already a part of. We just don't always plug into it, right? So what ends up happening is when we've got to buckle down and get down to it, and last week I was talking about manhandling our life, making ourselves do something, we can do that in the short term to sort of kickstart the motivation, but it's not sustainable. What is sustainable is when you tune into this expansive mind, when you tune into this collective consciousness through this deep inner knowing in yourself, and then you're called to do things differently. You're called to do different things. And you're called to do them in a way that is self-sustaining. It's self-propelling because it fuels you. As you fuel it, it fuels you. As you fuel it, it fuels you. And it becomes this cycle of reciprocity. And you can build success that way without those deep, deep concaves of burnout. That doesn't mean you don't get tired. That doesn't mean you don't have detox times. It doesn't mean you don't have times for some cognitive consolidation. It just means that you don't go so deep, deep, deep into those valleys and that are so hard to climb back out of, right? So this is the reason why intuition is important in the first place. This is the reason why we want to foster this, because that intuition is really tapping into these deep wells of wisdom that are not just us, but this entire collective. And then the next question was, okay, so if that's the case, how do I even begin to do that? There are a lot of things that a lot of different people do. There's a myriad of options. And if you a lot of people already have something, they just didn't connect the dots. You know, running is a meditative practice. Running is something where, you know, you're just doing something automatic. The blood's pumping to the brain. You're breathing, so you're oxygenating the blood, and everything, all your cylinders start to fire. And yet you're on sort of this autopilot. After you get past that, like the hurt, and then you find that groove and you're in that space. That's where that meditative piece comes in. And people will often say the shower, you know, they're on autopilot. They're scrubbing away, they're washing, and that's where all their good ideas come from, because in that moment they're not desperately trying to solve a problem. So that we have these little glimmers in our everyday life where we sort of have this space to know what we really want. But how do we do it on purpose when we're sitting down at our desk and we're saying, okay, today's the day I start my book. Today is the day I start that big project. Today is the day I really dive into my new business or whatever it is, right? How do you then take those times that happen organically and do them on purpose? I am always a proponent of daily meditation. The more you meditate, the thicker and more robust the gray cells get in this emotional part of your brain. So compassion, empathy, kindness, patience. And the more those grow, the more calm you keep your neurology so that you stay in this thinking, creative, processing part of your brain for longer during stressful times, and you don't revert back to that reptilian brain. So you're basically, through meditation, creating the bandwidth you need to stay creative in your problem solving. And it's happening because you're becoming more emotionally centered. So it's one of those things, right? We tend to think of cognitive ability and emotional intelligence as being two completely different things. They're not at all. The more you have control over your emotions, and I don't mean, again, manhandling them. I mean, the more you develop compassion and kindness and empathy and patience and forgiveness and grace, all of those things, the less stress you have in your life. And with less stress, the easier your problem solving gets. And the easier your problem solving gets, the more you can stay in that space that says, I really want this long game. I really want to write that book. I really want to do that project, right? So daily meditation, in my mind, is the best way to develop this intuition, to develop this piece of you that can stay calm, cool, and collected enough to tune in and tap into the answers you already have here, as well as receiving from this collective consciousness that we all share in. If you need help with some of these, I have 3 meditations. They use a theta wave music in the background that helps you go a little bit deeper, helps you integrate these things. They're a great place to start. 3 minutes, 9 minutes, 20 minutes. If you already have a practice, you can get them at tiffanyhammond.com/products-services, okay? It's a little package of 3. It's $7. No, but go get the friggin' meditations. If you've never done it, just go get them. But if you have a meditative process that you do, if you have something that you used to do and you haven't gotten into, I strongly suggest you start tapping into that more often. I said they're 3, 9, and 20 minutes. That's 3 minutes 3 times a day is all it takes to start conditioning that part of your brain that can thicken and get better and improve on the things that bring you peace and peace of mind. Another way is to journal, right? Just get it all out. Just do a big mind dump. And what you'll find is, as you're writing, you get beneath the layers of those surface thoughts. You get away from the symptoms and down into the causes. Great conversation with friends, really deep, meaningful conversation with friends. That does it for me too. I don't have access to that every day because I'm a solopreneur and I'm not in a workspace where we're having daily lunches. But that is something that really maybe you have access to more easily. If you have young kids, maybe meditation doesn't seem reasonable, but deep conversation with friends does. So pick a method, reach out to me, let me know how it goes, and I want to know how this tuning in process changes the way you approach your goals and your everyday life, because I have a feeling, I know, that this is going to do wonders, not just for your well-being, but for your productivity as well. Keep in touch with me on the blog or here on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, and I will see you next time. Bye. Meditative. Om.